The second lecture, we will be discussing the legislative branch of government, because you remember that the US Constitution created three branches of government. The legislative branch is also known as the US Congress, or simply the Congress. So what does it do? What are its missions? Representation is the first. Remember the principle of popular sovereignty? Well, representation is simply this idea that the US Congress is in charge of representing the people from various districts, various states. Lawmaking, making the laws, creating, writing, voting the laws. Oversight. Congress is in charge of checking what the other two branches are doing. It is overseeing, controlling the actions, especially of the executive branch. And finally, it's a lesser known mission, but the US Congress is in charge of educating the public. In this lecture, I will deal with 4 points, 4 issues. A. Representation. How are the two chambers of Congress organized to represent the American people and the American nation? 2. Lawmaking. How does it work? How do you make the laws? 3. Overseeing, oversight. The principle of checks and balances, which I discussed in the first lecture. And finally, I'll have a look at the current situation, a divided Congress. What is the situation in Congress right now? Let me comment on the picture you're seeing in the background of the slide. This is a building which should be familiar if you visited the documents available on eCampus, and in particular the interactive map of Washington, D.C. So this is the Capitol building, Capitol Hill, the Capitol, the place where the US Congress works. Let's start with representation. This idea that the US Congress is a body of people elected by Americans to represent them. And these people are elected in two chambers, creating what is called a bicameral system. Bicameral, two chambers. On the one hand, you have the House of Representatives. On the other, you have the US Senate, or the Senate. The two chambers taken together constitute the US Congress. Every 2 years, a new Congress is elected. So in 2014, this year, we'll have the election of the 11th and 14th Congress. Let's start with the lower chamber, the House of Representatives. As you can see on this picture, it's quite a huge house, quite a huge assembly. There are many people. How many? 435. 435 representatives. One representative represents a district. It's a small area on the map. And a district contains approximately 700,000 people. So each district is 700,000 people. And it means that each district is approximately the same size. There are small variations in the very small states, but one representative represents 700,000 people, whether it's from New York or from Wyoming. Representatives are elected for 2 years in a very simple system. you have one ballot on election day. All the candidates run one ballot. Whoever gets the most vote is elected. It's a first past the post election, meaning that if you have more votes, you win. No second ballot. It's a very simple system. And it's a system under which incumbents are usually re-elected. What is an incumbent? Well, an incumbent is someone who is already in power during the election. So, for example, in 2012, Barack Obama was the incumbent president. He was already president and running for re-election. So if you're a representative in Texas and you're running for re-election, you're an incumbent. Why is that important? It's important because 2 years is a very short period of time, which means that representatives would not have enough time to work if they did not know that they are likely to be re-elected. 435 representatives, and the leader of the House is called the House Speaker. He represents the party which has a majority in the House of Representatives. His name right now is John Boehner, a Republican from Ohio. How do you know that there are 700,000 people in a state? Every decade, every 10 years, the people in the United States are counted. They are counted, and the number of representatives for a given state is changed to reflect the changes in the population. So these are the results of the last census in 2010. And as you can see, southern states such as Texas, Florida, in particular Arizona, all gained seats, while northeastern states lost seats, meaning that in the House of Representatives there are now more representatives from the south and less from the north, because the total number of representatives does not change. It means when one state gains a representative, another loses one. And this is what's been happening. The Northeast has been losing maybe not losing people, but has become relatively less important than the South, because that there are many immigrants in the South. Hence, this change in the balance between the North and the South. So, the first chamber, 435 representatives representing the people. And then you have a smaller chamber, the Senate. There are exactly 100 senators, 2 senators per state. What does that mean? It means that a huge state such as California has 18 million people. A huge state in California, such as California, has 36 million people. A small state like Wyoming has approximately 1 million people. 36 against 1. Yet California gets 2 senators, Wyoming gets 2 senators. It's not supposed to be fair. It's not supposed to be proportional to the population, because it is not. So the point is that these people do not represent the senators do not represent the American people. They represent the American states. They are part of the Federalist Compromise, which was found in the Constitution. Senators are also elected for a longer period of time. They are elected for 6 years. Yet, a third of the senators are elected with each congressional election. So a third of the Senate is renewed every 2 years. 2014, 33 senators will be elected. 2016, 33 more senators will be elected. And 2018, 34 senators will be elected, which means that the Senate will have been entirely renewed between now and 2020. The House, the leader in the House, is called the Speaker. In the Senate, there are two leaders. The first is the Vice President of the United States. But, as I indicated on the slide, it's mostly a formal role, which means that the Vice President is sometimes present in the Senate, but most of the time the person in charge of organizing the Senate is the majority leader, who is currently Harry Reid, a Democrat from Nevada. Pay attention, the House is controlled by Republicans, with John Boehner leading them. And the Senate is controlled by Democrats, with Harry Reid leading them. And we'll see that this is something of a problem. So why two chambers? We discussed that already. Because on the one hand, you have a representation of the people. On the other, you have a representation of the states. The House of Representatives, the Senate. If you want to sum up the differences, the House, 435 representatives, a large assembly. They are elected for 2 years and they represent the people. On the other hand, the Senate, a smaller assembly, 100 senators, 2 senators per state. They are elected for 6 years and a third of the Senate is renewed every 2 years, and the senators represent the state.